So what we have is in the first week of July 1947, around July 1 or July 2nd, there were a number of eyewitness sightings of UFO streaking across the sky in Roswell, New Mexico. Several ground observers saw that bright orb streaking across the sky west of town and headed toward the north, from south to north. At the same time that these observations were made within the town of Roswell, and I'm going to pause here to make a note that also that Roswell in 1947, at the time of this incident, was the home of the world's first atomic bombing group that the U.S. Army Air Force had established. Actually, this was the same group that dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then they were relocated to Roswell, New Mexico. So this was the one and only group of nuclear bombers at that time in history. So it was a significant military outpost for the United States, let's put it that way. And after this incident kind of marked the beginning of a wave of UFO sightings throughout throughout North America, really, and also as well as in other parts of the world. But this was like the leading edge of the coming of these strange visitors who started appearing, a lot of times appearing over military bases and very sensitive military installations, both in the U.S. and abroad. So this was disconcerting, to say the least, to our military leadership back in the late 40s and early 50s. Anyway, this evening that this saucer was spotted streaking to the north, there were several eyewitnesses I mentioned in my book, people who saw this object. Roswell, New Mexico is located in Chavez County, and immediately to the north is Lincoln County. And it was in Lincoln County that there was an intense thunderstorm going on at that time, and this was nighttime. And what apparently happened is the UFO that had been seen earlier in the area of town proceeded on to the north into Lincoln County, and there was some sort of mid-air lightning strike, possible lightning strike, or some other incident that caused the unidentified flying object to go into a distress flight situation. What happened at that point was a lot of metallic debris and other kinds of debris rained down on a ranch in Lincoln County called the Foster Ranch, and it created a huge, like a mile-long debris field there at the Foster Ranch in Lincoln County, near the small town of Corona, New Mexico. So sometimes this incident is associated with Corona, New Mexico, as well as being associated with a nearest city, which was Roswell, approximately 60 aerial miles away from where the debris came down. Well, the thing that was very interesting to me is that UFO researchers are almost unanimous in that although the debris that came down over the Foster Ranch was interesting and significant, the Foster Ranch was not the final impact point of the UFO. After the debris came down at the Foster Ranch, the object was able to level out and maintain flight for a distance beyond that, and the final impact point of the object was actually in the southeastern quadrant of Lincoln County, close to the northwestern quadrant of Chavez County. So right there in that area was the final impact site. And there's a number of eyewitness accounts that we can look at from firefighters and law enforcement officers who were dispatched out of Roswell up north to the northwestern part of Chavez County to respond to this incident. There were also, of course, the military from the base at Roswell, which was officially called the Roswell Army Airfield at the time, was also dispatched out to that location. What happened was that the military shifted the emphasis of what had happened back to the Foster Ranch, And when they, a couple of days later, released a press release saying that they had recovered a UFO, the first time in the history of the world, really, that an official governmental entity has admitted to having in its possession a crashed UFO, and that was a press release that was issued. And then a day or so later, of course, they backtracked and they said that no, sorry, folks, it was not a UFO after all. It was just a weather balloon. Well, all the officers that were part of the crash retrieval were well familiar with weather balloons and the material that weather balloons were made of, and it was quite evident in their testimony that they gave years afterward that they were not dealing with a weather balloon at all, but that was a cover story that was put into place. Meanwhile, the military was scouring the area of the actual impact site, which was about 40 or 50 miles removed or distant from the Foster Ranch location. So while all the attention was placed on the Foster Ranch, where debris came down out of the sky, the military had moved the crashed UFO and the bodies that had been recovered, according to witnesses, back down to the Roswell Army Airfield and to Building 84, which still exists today. It's a very eerie place to walk into. And they've got a little room in the back called the Gray Room. This was a room where the bodies were reportedly kept. It's a deep, dark room deep in the recesses of this large aircraft hangar. It's a very, very strange place. So that, in a nutshell, is what happened. All the attention was diverted away from the actual crash location. The military brought all the material back into Roswell, where it sat for several days, and then was transported out to other air bases, to other secret military installations around the country.
We have the actual ABC News radio broadcast from July 8, 1947, announcing a UFO crash near Roswell, New Mexico.
By the way, while Ruben gets that ready, this was covered by all the major newspapers in the United States, really, and picked up all over the world.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection. Late this afternoon, a bulletin from New Mexico suggested that the widely publicized mystery of the flying saucers may soon be solved. Army Air Force officers reported that one of the strange discs had been found and inspected sometime last week. Our correspondents in Los Angeles and Chicago have been in contact with Army officials endeavoring to obtain all possible late information. Joe Wilson reports to us now from Chicago.
The Army may be getting to the bottom of all this talk about the so-called flying saucer. As a matter of fact, the 509th Atomic Bomb Group headquarters at Roswell, New Mexico, reports that it has received one of the discs which landed on a ranch outside Roswell. The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico, and the rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazell was the man who discovered the saucer. Colonel William Blanchard of the Roswell Air Base refuses to give details of what the flying disc looks like. In Fort Worth, Texas, where the object was first sent, Brigadier General Roger Ramey says that it is being shipped by air to the AAF Research Center at Wright Field, Ohio. A few moments ago, I talked to officials at Wright Field, and they declared that they expect the so-called flying saucer to be delivered there, but that it hasn't arrived as yet.